talk a little bit about how we can bridge some of these languages, and then, in a sense, to show how these are, bilingual, multilingual approaches to teaching English or teaching other subjects through English. I'd like to divide this part into three sections. I'll say a little bit about dual language use, and then I'll start code switching and scaffolding. And I'm conscious that time is running on, so I'll try and keep it sort of fairly brief. So I'm sure that many of you will be familiar with dual language readers. We know that these books are often available in the more developed countries, the wealthier societies, but they're less evident here in sub-Saharan Africa, or perhaps, I don't know, in other low-income contexts, perhaps. They're not as common, I think. This is just to share with you something of a project which we initiated here in Rwanda, where there's a single shared mother tongue, Kinyarwanda. Everyone speaks Kinyarwanda, which is the language of instruction from P1 to P3, and then it shifts to English. So what we were looking to do was to try to support that shift to learning in English by taking some simple texts, based on the curriculum, the P4 curriculum, identifying some key words. This is a text about soil from a science lesson, and showing the key words together in Kinyarwanda English. Now, this is something you can do for any text, really, and it could be also a story in English, for English language teaching. You could identify some of the new words and present them in little word boxes, such as this. This is just another example. This time it's a message about health education, and again some words there, the equivalent shown in Kinyarwanda and English, to help support children where they're learning a new language. This is something slightly different. I apologize, you may not be able to see that small print, but it's really just to show you what a dual language teacher guide can look like, where one side of the page is printed in English and the other side in the mother tongue, in Kinyarwanda. So you can extend that principle from the textbook to teachers' guides. So just want to move on then from dual languages to code switching. I'm sure this is a topic. This is something which you're familiar with. It's sometimes referred to as translanguaging, and here's just a humorous example of a teacher here in a school recognizing the fact that her kids are coming back to school and they've been busy texting all summer and using a different code, as it were. And so she's recognized that she has to switch from formal English to another genre to help them make the transition back to school after the holiday. A nice visual example of code switching. Well, again, following up on those little samples from the textbooks, this is how you can plan code switching in terms of teaching and learning. You can actually introduce these into the activities, classroom activities, where, for example, you ask the kids to talk about a topic or theme first in their own language before they talk about it in English. Another example, or here are just some other examples of when code switching might be appropriate. And I think it's important to stress here, we're not talking about the kind of the unconscious code switching that takes place, in social life or daily chat. We're talking of professional practice. It's a strategic use of code switching where, on a moment-by-moment basis, you make a professional decision to use the L1 for a particular purpose, to promote learning, and then you may switch back to English. So it's not a willy-nilly thing. It's purposeful, it's intentioned, and it's strategic. So some of the benefits of switching then in the bio-multilingual classroom, and I'm just going to have to progress quite quickly because time is moving ahead. So scaffolding, which came up in one of the earlier slides, is again something that you'll probably be familiar with. Some of you, I'm sure, will have come across this, and because a lot of our EFL activities, you know, gap filling, etc., provide temporary help that assists a learner to move towards new concepts, levels of understanding, helping them to do something which independently, at present, they may not be able to do, but it's like a bridge. You want to help them get to a point where they can do things for themselves. So in terms of scaffolding strategies, here's a little slide just to show how the use of the first language, their own language, is recognized as an important scaffolding strategy, along with other strategies. Typical forms of language scaffolding: teacher talk, and I'm sure we're all familiar with how we adjust our talk, you know, to the level of the pupils, to make sure that they understand, to signal our talk, etc., to make it clear and comprehensible. Use of visuals and body language, the design of tasks, etc. Lots of ways in which we scaffold.